Thank you so much
Thank you,
for being here.
Question one, should I be wearing a mask?
I think you're the one who's allowed not to wear the mask.
No, if you say so, I'll wear it, but I'm okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
I'm far away from you also. I don't think the virus is going there. I mean, if I have. And yours won't reach me, not to worry about it, if you have.
Yeah.
So may I start with a prayer and then
Sure.
proceed? Yeah. Om Brahmanandam Paramasugadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gaganasadarsham Tattvamasya Laksham Ekam Nityam Vimalam Achalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Satgurum Tam Namah. I bow down to the Supreme Teacher, the seed of all teachings, who is faultless, pure, clear, and who is no different from my and your true essence. This is the summing up of the prayer. So, first let me offer my condolences to you for, you know what. So
Yeah.
we'll proceed.
Well, thank you. That's actually related to my first question, which will sound selfish, but I think it's universal.
All are selfish. We are, unless we are shellfish.
Yeah. As you know, and some of my friends in the room know, my mom passed away rather suddenly 3.5 weeks ago or so. And I think, this is an experience that all of us will face, the loss of a loved one, and also the loss of our own life, ultimately. And so what do you say is this most important things to hold on to, the wisdom to hold on to in these transitions of passing of a loved one and our own passing, ultimately?
Mm-hmm. It's not easy to think of all the teachings when you're in the midst of a situation which happens suddenly, especially when it happens suddenly. I can speak about being non-attached and free of all emotions, and negative emotions, and so on. But when this happens to someone who is close, he also knows. So it's not easy to practice all this, because one of the reasons is your own children or your mother, for instance, or your own family, they're linked to you by genes and by blood and by having, especially the relationship between a child, however much he has grown afterwards, and the mother especially, is very intimate. For 10 months you have lived inside the womb. It's not easy. In fact, the father doesn't do much. It's the mother who goes through this whole thing, brings up the child and makes you stand up on your own feet. So it's quite natural that there is this pain. However, the teaching is, well, my mother also passed away, but then much later, 16 years ago. Even though I had separated myself from the family in some way, I used to go see her once in a while because she's the only one I felt would feel let down. And she has suffered so much because I ran away when I was 19 and went off to the Himalayas and so on and so forth. So I did feel a little bit of pain, but then part of the teachings that actually are useful in such situations is that you are not the only one that loses a loved one. The most important teaching, apart from the understanding that one is not the body and so forth, keep it aside for the time being, the most important teaching is that there is not a single person who has not gone through the demise of someone dear and near to you in this world. Everybody passes through it. We feel the pain because it happens to us as an individual. If we can see that pain in others, then it's shared and gets diluted. You can't get away from it. You should not get away from it, nor should you try to discard it, saying, yeah, you can if you're a monk, a sannyasi. As long as you're not a monk, then all these relationships are still there. In your mind, you might have discarded them, but they still exist. Now I must tell you, one of the most important teachers of Advaita Vedanta, for instance, Adi Shankara. According to the rule of sannyas, you are not supposed to go when your mother dies because you don't have a mother anymore. You have finished everything off, right? All relationships are over. You have broken the thread and put it into the fire. It's all over. But he came back. Now, can we find a more greater sannyasi than Shankara? I don't think we can see anywhere, but he did. He broke a rule because he felt that he should be present. Well, there was another reason. He said he wanted to guide his mother's soul so that she doesn't come back. That's there. We don't know. I mean, this is the internal thing, but we don't know. From outside, we can only say he went back and looked and waited there till his mother passed away. Okay. So, these are emotions which can't be swept aside, and they take time to heal. You cannot heal them so fast. Well, it helps when you are centered in your true self, when your mind is quiet, and you know how impermanent the world is. I mean, this is one of the teachings, right? The impermanence of everything around us. When you see that, you realize that this is also one of those things that has happened. And what was supposed to be is not there anymore. And all things that have come out of the void, you know that, go back into the void. However, it's quite natural that you feel a loss. I'm not of the opinion that that should be discarded from the mind. Rather, it should be allowed to run its own course and subside. So, to be free of conflicting emotions is one thing, and to consciously push off something that you love is another. These are two things as I see it. So, two ideas keep in mind. Anything that is here in this world is temporary and it will pass off. That includes my mother, my father, my children. Also, from the philosophical as well as from personal experience, I have to tell you that the soul does not die when the body goes. It's there somewhere. We don't know where it is, of course, but it is there. It has its own evolution. It has to come back. It has to develop. It has to move forward. I won't go on much about this. I think I have kind of summed it up. But I want to tell you a little story. When you know Swami Vivekananda, many people have heard. Many people don't know much about Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who was his guru, right? Because he was a simple village priest who could hardly sign his name. Swamiji went abroad, he talked, he spoke, everybody knew him. But he was a quiet village priest living in Calcutta, so hardly anybody, those days, some people knew, but later on, through Swami Vivekananda, that Ramakrishna was introduced to people. And he was, in Swami Vivekananda's estimate, his guru was such a great being. And when somebody in UK, in England, asked him, can you describe your guru to us? He kept quiet for a while. He didn't want to say a word. Then he said, okay, since they asked, let me talk. And he said, I can say only this much, that a speck of dust from those blessed feet could have created 1,000 Vivekanandas. This is how he expressed his love and respect for his teacher. Now, I'm not talking about that, but I'm trying to such a great person like Ramakrishna. When he passed away, his wife, Sharada Devi, in those days, it is a custom of widows when the husband passes away. After a couple of days, there is some date when they break their bangles, which is a sign of marriage, and remove the red dot, which is the sindoor, the red spot which is touched between this partition here of the forehead. They wipe it off to say that, and don't wear any jewelry, to say that my husband has passed away and I'm a widow. It's a symbol. When Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa died, the day was just about to come after 3 days or so when she was supposed to do that. The previous night, he appeared in a vivid dream to her. And he said, "Are you crazy? Are you silly? Why are you going to break your bangles and take it off of this?" She said, "But you have gone." He said, "Where?" He said, "I have shifted from this room to the other." So you'll see the pictures of Sharada Devi. She lived a long time. Even after many direct disciples passed away, she was alive. She has the red mark. She has the bangles. She also wore something in the ears. She didn't discard it because she was convinced that he just passed from one room to other. So those who go pass from one room to the other. Maybe we have no access to that room. And it's not right also to have access. I don't like the mumbo jumbo where people, we want to contact the dead. Hey, they've gone, they're free. Why the hell do you want to put them now? Right? They're on their own way, their own evolution. You have your own things to do. But then it happens because you're attached. You have love and affection for them, so you feel, oh, maybe I can.
So, the teaching is also that nothing happens without divine will. And yet in this world, there are things that we label both good and horrible happening all the time. What's the difference between divine will and the sort of sum of human will, right? Or, the sum of human will plus the momentum of karma.
When you say everything happens by divine will, it doesn't mean that everything is set to happen just like this, like a design. What it means, now when you say divine will, the human beings are the only creatures, and animals are very intelligent, they love you, you love them, that's all fine. But human beings are the only creatures who have a spark of the divine which they can recognize. Others also have, animals also have, but they can't recognize it themselves. We are the only ones who can, if possible, or if we work towards it, recognize it, feel it, that there is a divine spark in us. So, if there is a divine spark in us, a little bit of divine will is also there in us. Look at it carefully. So while there is this larger divine will, every one of us has a small divine will in us, and which, using our intellect, we try to go in a certain direction. The problem is, when it clashes with the final game, then it goes wrong. It doesn't work. We don't know what that will is, right? So we can only go by this will. But when it fails, you should understand that it has gone against the greater plan. This is what happens. So, when you say you have will, you also have the mind and the brain to decide what is good and what is bad. Now, when I say good and bad, what I mean is, according to my understanding, anything that is harmful to others is bad, and to oneself. And anything that is not harmful to others, useful, is good. I have one more definition for this. Anything that leads me towards my spiritual goal is good for me, and anything that leads me away from it is bad. For some other person it may be different. Right? So these are relative concepts based on our brain and its understanding. What the divine plan is, hardly anybody knows. Maybe one knows when one tunes oneself to the spark of the divine which is in us, some general idea of this plan comes to us. And everything falls under this plan. There is one thing which any human being, whatever his background, whatever his past birth, whatever his inclinations, has the full freedom to go towards. And that is the understanding of his inner self.
At the same time, like the things that we try and do in the world, sometimes they fail, right?
Right.
Oftentimes they fail. And so how do we know if the things that are failing are just against the divine will and that we're supposed to go someplace else, or, figure out how to do it and or shift to something else because it wasn't divine will, it's just our egoic intention.
Right. So now this requires a little bit of thought. When you want to do something, and I'm sure that you and some of us here do not want to do things with bad intentions, hopefully, right? So our intentions are good and we want to do something, and well, it doesn't succeed. What I'm saying is don't give up so fast. That's a fatalistic way of doing it. Maybe it's not in divine will, so let me keep trying. If after repeated trials you see that it falls flat, then say, okay, this is the divine will. Don't jump the gun. Don't say, oh, little failure, oh, this is divine will, so I won't do this. Then what? Then I'll do something else. Right, I was doing Vipassana. Well, it didn't work. It's divine will. I shouldn't do. Then what? Then I'll go to this Bhakti Marga, whatever. So I do that. Then I sing Hare Krishna for some time, or Ram Ram. And that is also not, oh, this is divine will, so I'm out of it. You see, one needs to persist. And after persistent effort, real effort, if it's still failing, then you can attribute it to divine will and say, oh, probably this is what it should be. And something is very interesting. Sometimes what we think is failure is in the long run a success. Yeah. We think we have failed. That failure comes with certain lessons which help us to move forward. This happened many times to many people. I used to know a great yogi who said he wanted to become a rich man one time. He tried very hard, and then when he succeeded sometimes, he failed sometimes, and then one day he decided, this is not going to happen. I'm not cut out for this kind of thing. I can't do cutthroat competition. I just can't do this. And he said, okay, it's finished and I'm going off to the forest. Right? He went off somewhere to the hermit. He found a teacher, lucky guy. And then he developed himself in the spiritual field. And when he looked back, he said, I was lucky I lost. Otherwise, I would have continued becoming rich and lost this treasure. So, when you say divine will, there are some good things which divine will can make happen. But since we are not attuned to it, we consider it as, oh, this is tough. I said, divine, why is God troubling me so much? It's trouble that make you rise up beyond. It's a fact. I was going to tell you something else and I completely forgot. And this guy said to me that in those days I didn't have even food. I didn't have money to buy food and eat. And now when I reach this and I've never lacked food. But then people started coming and saying, take whatever you want. He said, no, I don't want to have much of this. I'm happy with this. Nature also has this very peculiar built-in nature. Nature has this nature, which is when you run behind something, it runs away from you. You say, okay, if it comes, it comes. Somewhat like a girl. Then you come to it. I'm sorry, I'm joking. Then it likes to find you. Well, boys are also the same. I'm just joking. So, food for thought.
So, my next question is kind of about spirituality and activism. We're in Berkeley, which is kind of like a liberal beacon that's full of a lot of activism.
Yeah.
And sometimes this activism leads to good changes in the world. I also find that a lot of activists are driven by anger. Anger. They're upset about some kind of injustice in the world, and that's what drives their action. So, do you feel like activism is a good way to channel anger, or do you believe that we should try and rid ourselves of anger first and then act, or would we even lose the fuel to act without that anger?
As usual, there's a very subtle question coming from you. Well, per se, activism, according to me, is a good thing. Leave alone other things, it's a good thing. Because you cannot meditate or be spiritual all 24 hours. You cannot. So what do you do with the rest of the time? You need to do some action which is good for others. If you define activism, that one is doing good to others in some way, serving the unfortunate, and so on, then that activism also becomes a tool for your sadhana. Because then you shed the dross of your own mind by sympathizing with others and trying to help them out. And gradually, when the mind is purified, then you are also able to meditate properly. It's not easy to sit down and meditate when your mind is full of crude, totally selfish and self-centered emotions. The one way to break that is to help the unfortunate, whoever you are. But regarding the anger, I would say it's good to help somebody without anger. Of course, there is good anger and bad anger. Like, you really find somebody is in trouble and it is because of such and such a situation and you're angry with whoever initiated it. That's not bad anger, but it should not result in violence. I think even that kind of anger, through constant service, would slowly better off, move off. But we should be conscious that it is better to serve without being angry. You can call it constructive anger, if you like, as long as you don't cause injury to somebody else. If it's in your mind and you're doing it because I'm angry, I need to change things, that's fine. But it should not affect all your decisions. Then we are in trouble. I would suggest that while activism is good, in fact, in early days, among the Hindu system of thought, including the monks which we had, the order of monks which we had, there was not much of a concept of activism. It was perhaps earliest one probably was Swami Vivekananda, who introduced this into the monastic members. He said, you guys cannot meditate 24 hours a day, so what do? The rest of the time, go and serve the unfortunate. Be active. Since we are on the subject, I need to look at this. It's a very nice concept. Sankhya, Sankhya philosophy of Kapila, from which terms have been borrowed in Vedanta, in Yoga Darshana, and various other disciplines, talks about 3 gunas. with three attributes of human beings: sattva, rajas and tamas. Now, tamas is defined as inertia, not doing any action whatsoever, just laziness, total selfishness and self-involvement, not caring about others at all, and not doing anything in particular, and saying, oh, everything is okay, I'm okay. This is tamas. Tamas is also the mentality of some people, unfortunately for some reason, who can't go to sleep unless they have some bad thought about somebody else. There are such people, believe me. Now, this is tamas. That's okay, that's one attribute. Everybody has a little bit of tamas, a little bit of rajas, and a little bit of sattva, and the balance is different, proportion is different. Some tamas is there with everybody. Even when you go to sleep, it is the tamoguna that is acting. Right. However, what happens? The main problem is that when, especially those on the spiritual path, begin to mistake tamas for sattva, because sattva is also by nature actionless, quietness, tranquility. In sattva-guna, you don't have to do any activity. Very often, the tamoguna is mistaken for sattva. I know many young people who come to me, generally on cannabis, and they say we are in samadhi. This is mistaking tamoguna for sattva-guna. They say, we want to come to Madanapalli. And I say, to do what? Nothing. So, one shouldn't mistake this for the other. Now, what is the way to convert tamoguna into sattva? Action. Swami Vivekananda said this exactly to the monks. He said, sometimes you might just be lazy and think that you are in sattva. And believe me, you are not Thakur, not Ramakrishna. So, do some work so that the sattva is converted into rajas. And when rajas, which is activity, action, is oriented towards the good of others, then it tends towards sattva, takes you to sattva. And from sattva, you finally reach the state which is beyond all gunas. You can't jump from tamoguna to that which is beyond all gunas. It's a gradual process. So, I think activism is better than no action at all. But try to avoid the anger that builds up. Make it more positive.
It feels like your answer also draws out a distinction between seva, like service, and activism. And maybe there's an overlap, but not all activism is seva.
Yeah.
Not all seva is activism.
Absolutely. When I said seva, that is the Sanskrit word for service. So service orientation is activism in some way. Somebody wants to do it actively, somebody wants to do it passively. So when you do it actively, then it becomes activist. It's not a bad name, you know what I mean. But the way it has been looked at, interpreted, used sometimes is not always healthy for us or healthy for others. I'm a great activist. What action? I go and talk to people. I can't say I'm not an activist, because then I would be just sitting there quietly, doing nothing. I feel I can do something. I can help others in some way, at least make them understand. So I go and do these things, and not out of anger. See, I'm not angry with Jenna. She hasn't seen me for so long. Or Jennifer, she hasn't seen me. That's just that. Everybody wears a mask. I can't make out who's who, but that's okay. We all look like a bunch of bank robbers. Okay.
So what do you say leads to lasting happiness and fulfillment? Like, are people as happy as they decide to be, or is it just a matter of perspective and kind of choosing our attitude, or does it take something else?
One way what you said is true. Those who choose to be happy, whatever the circumstances, will try and remain happy. That's the worldly part of it. But then this is not always possible, because we are faced with so many challenges, so many troubles, so many problems. Even if I want to remain positive, which is a good thing, I want to remain happy, in spite, I get sometimes caught up in this cobweb of pain, alternate with pleasure. And when one pleasure goes, I'm in pain, I want to get back to some other kind of pleasure. So this is there. So even if I have an attitude and I decide I want to be happy, I won't get caught, but nature, pulls us into it somehow. So I think the permanent solution, if one seeks, is to go deep within and find out that in the recesses of your own consciousness, in the core of your consciousness, there is a great deal of happiness which is not affected by any outward happening. It's a fountainhead of all happiness inside, which is why in ancient times it was called Satchidananda. You mark the word Ananda at the end. Sat and Chit is hard to understand, but Ananda everybody understands. We all want to be happy in some way. So they only say that the only permanent Ananda available to us is that which is real, as opposed to that which is here today and gone tomorrow. And that which is conscious, Chit. It's not an inanimate object. So when that is reached, then it becomes easy in the midst of all circumstances to remain tranquil and kind of peaceful and enjoying your inner self. However, till we reach there, I would suggest it's better to maintain a happy outlook than an unhappy. Even in sadhana, after 6 months of sadhana, people come and say, "Oh, I've not found it." 6 months? Whole life one is levered and somehow hit upon something. Maybe the lucky ones can find it in a minute, but there are rare cases. So, what is the use of lamenting? I would say, think of others and say, "Oh, this guy has been doing sadhana for 6 years and nothing seems to have happened." Be happy that you're at least this way. So while I advocate that you try to remain happy, attitude of mind, I would also say that don't neglect the fact that this cannot be sustained until we find the inner happiness which is in us. When that is found, then you can sustain it. Till then, if it falls, try to recover and come back. That's all you can do with that.
So, you had to journey to the Himalayas to meet Maheshwarnath Babaji, your teacher.
Yes.
And yet, all of us sit here in my living room and get to meet you. And I know there are people in this room who regard you as,
let me help.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you so much. Sorry.
There are people in this room who are both meeting you for the first time and those who regard you as their fully realized or nearly fully realized teacher, right? And between all of that, there's a wide spectrum of effort that people make. Some people think, "Oh, you're my teacher and everything's taken care of now," right? And others think...
Unfortunately not. Anyway.
Other people think, what's the need for a teacher if you have the technique? You do the work and whatever's supposed to happen will happen. So what is the right... attitude that we should have about your presence in our lives to just make optimal use of this opportunity that we have?
I would say that the best thing to do is not to say that he is my teacher, so he will take care of everything and do nothing. This is not a good attitude. You go nowhere. Well, what was that? So, you need also to put in some effort yourself and move forward. If you simply think that, actually I discourage people from following that kind of path. Oh, he will look after me. The funny thing is, sometimes the man is not there physically, he's only there in a picture and you still think he will take care of you. I have to do nothing, it's just my grace. All that is true in a way, that's okay, but it's no substitute for the effort that you put in. Okay, so what am I doing here? Well, I went off to the Himalayas, right? Okay. So everybody cannot run off to the Himalayas. So what do? So I come here and say, this is how a person who has gone away to the Himalaya looks and behaves and lives. So you take some lessons. Oh, he's also wearing normal clothes, so he must be fine. So we are also wearing. So they get to see that there is someone who has gone to the Himalayas, who has met a great master, who has apparently some changes have taken place, and how he behaves and how he lives with you and how he talks to you. You see that and you feel, maybe this is possible for me. If this much message goes, I am very happy about this. And also it is impossible to take everybody in as a disciple and train them. That those times have passed. I would rather say that people should as much as possible be self-reliant. So adhyaya means self-knowledge, knowledge by your own self, through your own effort. While you can get help, where necessary, we should also see, ultimately the teaching is to make everybody stand on their own feet. So, till then maybe we can help, but after that they should stand on their own feet. If they become totally dependent on me, then that's not the way to move forward. At least that is what I think. And I make no attempts to make people totally dependent on me. I don't know if somebody is doing that, but I don't. I'm a person like you who has had some experiences, and they seem to have brought about some change, internal and external, and I carry on with life, and I say follow certain teachings which I am giving you, and you will probably also go there. You will get there where I am. Well, it depends on various factors when you get there. Depends on various factors. You can't. Each person has a different background, different births. I believe that there are past births, different births. And according to that, the time span of reaching there may differ. But that's not to discourage anybody. Keep trying. Who knows? You might be a gifted individual who has still not discovered it. One day you discover and say, that's it. So, for your question, to sum it up, the answer is that I like to be a good friend. I like to mix with you, to be with you. Doesn't mean, well, I won't go and have a beer with you, but you know what I mean. And show you that a person like me, who's like you, can also touch that. And there is no need of going to the Himalayas now, because we have brought the Himalayas here. So, you know what I mean. Well, if at some point you feel like going to the Himalayas, please do. It's an interesting place. Although it's soon becoming a tourist paradise, but still there are places where you can go and stay quietly and enjoy your inner peace. So, don't look at me like some special guy who has come from the Himalayas, please. then it doesn't serve my purpose.
I am going to transition to questions from everyone after this next question, but you know, given what you shared, there are people who are your disciples for sure. I don't know if you would agree or not. You might pop a lot of balloons in the room. Based on what you said, you don't have to answer that. But what?
You know, I'm still to find a good disciple. Sorry. Anyway.
So what is it that qualifies someone to be? What is it that qualifies someone to be a disciple?
See, I don't have disciples, so there's no qualification for that. I have good friends. I have people who have known me for many years. People have known me for a few years. So, that's the difference. However, when people take Kriya from me, let's say, then they naturally say that, okay, I'm a disciple of him because I have taken Kriya from him. Now the problem here, simply by taking Kriya, you don't get anything. There are various other parameters to be looked after. You should know where you're going. Some people think it's some magic. You give me Kriya. Why would you want Kriya? For what? Have you thought about it? Why Kriya is practiced? And is there only one Kriya? There may be many Kriyas in the Yoga Shastras. Right? So, it's not that. But since if I give Kriya to somebody, or if I say, okay, I'm giving you something to chant, or whatever, or I'm teaching you something, then I have certain responsibilities to carry on my shoulders. Therefore, I would say that person is my disciple or close to me. So that I'm trying to figure out how to take him across this journey, because it's largely unexplored territory. Yes. So, so that's what it is. So there's nothing to do to come close to me. Give me a cup of tea and you're close to me. You don't give me a cup of tea, you're still close to me. I assure you, all the people who are sitting here, whether they want it or not, I am close to you. I'm your good friend. So, I think it should be like that. It's a better way of, otherwise, too much adoration and too much, can spoil the whole thing. And then you become dependent on me. I don't want anybody to be dependent on me. I want you to understand that the spark that shines in me is also shining in you. Now, all I'm trying to do, since you can't see it now, I'm just opening the wheels. So because of that, if you think I'm a guru and you're my disciple, that's okay, I welcome that. Please understand, it does not mean that you should have been involved in any system of initiation. This is what I'm trying to say. I know there are people who I have not given any kind of initiation, or which you normally call initiation, formally. But yet I think they are close to me, because they are following a certain procedure to move forward. Most thing I'm very frightened of is a cult. This I'm really worried about. There are too many already. We don't want another M cult. No. The other is that if people come and tell me, I surrender to you, I can't understand what this means. How do you surrender? It can't be done. It's not a joke. If really somebody surrendered, if you say, go jump in the well, they'll do it immediately. No, but can I wait for 3 days before my exams are over, before I jump into the well? There is no surrender, right? And for the basic question which you asked, unfortunately, I'm still looking for an ideal. I don't have it. I wish I had any, because I'm now 72 past and I'm moving forward. This body also has to go. I don't know there's anybody I can hand over and say, okay, here you go. Sad, but hopefully somebody will turn up, or I may go without having anybody. That's also okay.
So I can switch to Q&A now, or there's a kind of a...
Can I have 2 minutes
course.
for my tea?
Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
This is my first time here and meeting you and hearing about you.
Introduce yourself, please. What's your name?
My name is Paritosh Kulkarni.
Okay.
I was actually born in Nasik, right near Vivekananda Ashram.
Okay.
And it's been a long time. Somebody actually described the story that you described today. My question is that, and I don't know much about it, is when and how did you first learn Sanskrit? Was it since your childhood? Because it's amazing, and I haven't heard, or yeah, it's been a while that somebody described in that detail about words and Sanskrit.
Now you put me now. Well, I've never studied Sanskrit. Not in childhood. There was no chance to study Sanskrit in my household. I would have studied Arabic maybe. And later on, I was listening to some teachers who used to come and talk about the Gita. Swami Chinmayananda used to come when I was in school. But even then, I didn't know enough Sanskrit to be able to. The second language in school was Hindi. So the Devanagari script I did pick up. But Hindi is not Sanskrit, although there are many Sanskrit words. I was born in Kerala, so there is this Malayalam language, which again has 40% Sanskrit words. But still I didn't know Sanskrit. Ask a Malayali, how many people know Sanskrit? So then I went to Himalayas. I met Mysore-nath Babaji, and he decided that I should learn a little bit of Sanskrit because he was teaching me the textbooks on Vedanta, Upanishads and various other texts. So he said, it's a good idea to know Sanskrit, so firsthand you can understand. So he said, no, this is very interesting. He taught every Upanishads I have learned from him, even the magnum opus of Gorakhnath called Siddha Siddhanta Padhari and so on. He never had a book with his hands. He never had a text in his hands. It was all coming from his head or heart or mind or whatever you want. So I was wonderstruck and I was thinking, how can I develop this understanding of the scriptures? Because I haven't even studied Sanskrit and I'm already 19, 20 years old. What will happen to me? So when we were in Uttarkashi, he once sent me to Joshiji, who was a Sanskrit teacher. He went and talked to him and said, take him on as a student. I said, okay. He said, all right. So I went. And Joshiji was a very traditional Sanskrit teacher, where you need to recite and make your words clear, Vak Shuddhi and so on before you go into other things. So he decided to teach me how to chant, not chant, I mean read. So we usually start with the Taittiriya. And he said, all you do is I read, or rather I chant, also read, and you follow me. You need to perfect your Sanskrit intonation and your pronunciation. I said, okay. So he chanted, and I chanted after him. Then he chanted, and I chanted after him. After a few minutes, he stopped, and he said, are you telling a lie? I said, why? He said, you have attended a Sanskrit school. I said, no, sir, I haven't. This is the first time I'm come here. I said, but then how come the letters are so clear? How does the Akshara Shuddhi come? I said, I don't know. I'm saying what you are saying, I'm following you. Then he just said, in Hindi, he said, Babaji, kaise kaise logon ko yahan pe? What all kind of people Babaji sends here? And there that ended. And I learnt. I must have done about 6 months with him, because we were in Uttar Kashi for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, Babaji told me, enough, finish. I said, Babaji, I have to. Ho gaya, finished. That's all that I've learnt. And the rest unfolded itself gradually. Today I can take up a Sanskrit text and translate it and comment on it and move forward. If you ask me how, I don't know. Now, the hope is that if I can do it, perhaps that potential is in everybody in some way. Or maybe in my past life I learned Sanskrit somewhere and came back somewhat equipped, needed brushing up, maybe. I don't want to say anything because it's in the realm of speculation. Today when I see a word, I know what it means and I try to explain. Because Sanskrit is such a language, one word may have multiple meanings. This is another problem out there. You need to see the context and various other factors before you decide. So, no, I didn't think somebody is going to ask me this question.
Thank you for, this adds on to my this question about transmission. As I meditate, obviously to be sitting in front of you, there is some information that comes through another source. And through my meditation, could you say more about transmission? To get this information from within, but sometimes I wonder, where did I get this? That's it.
Okay. You need to look at it in a slightly different angle from what we normally do, which is, when you say normally, when I sit down and meditate, certain things come to me and I think they're transmitted. Okay. Now, more than transmission, there are probably things that are coming from the layers in your own being which you have not explored. And maybe I or somebody else may be just acting as a trigger. In my case, none of the teachings of the Upanishads were transmitted to me by Babaji. But he pressed that switch which triggered the understanding which was in me, which could grasp it immediately. So the good news is everybody has that capacity somewhere, deep hidden. When you meditate and when you are off guard, when you say this is not possible, this is possible, and when you are in a quiet, tranquil, passive mood, it's possible that this knowledge which you have is coming out from inside you to tangible understanding. It may happen because somebody is putting on the switch or someone is helping you. That part you can call transmission. But what comes is from your own stock. From what you know, deep down, the essence of our being, which is the supreme reality, a spark, is not different from the whole. WHOLE, whole. And not, so, no, I mean, we need to clarify. So, when this happens, you are moving towards that. And that is infinite wisdom, infinite bliss, and infinite and all-pervading. So therefore, a part of it is in you. As you explore and go deeper, those dimensions which you are not obviously aware of begin to unravel themselves. This is probably what's happening. Nothing to do with. I'm escaping.
This is my first time here as well. My name is Manasi Dash. And
Say that again, what's your name?
Manasi Dash.
Manasi
and
Dash.
I'm originally from the land of Jagannath Puri.
Okay.
So, one thing that I grapple with is, and I think most of us can relate to this, is we have something called an intuition, a vibe, or a gut feel. And in those moments when you're calm and when you're tranquil, it's a supernatural force or an energy that's trying to tell you something. But the brain can also be quite fickle.
Quite what?
Fickle.
Fickle.
And there is something that's called I call it as the figment of my imagination. So how do I distinguish between what's true intuition versus what is a figment of my imagination?
It's very difficult to distinguish, which is why I keep warning people when they say, I suddenly had this intuition and did it. It could be your own mind speaking. Sometimes they worship somebody or some image or some being or some goddess or devta, and they say the devta is speaking to me. Now, one has to know if it is the devta speaking to you or is it your mind pretending to be the devta. It's not easy to distinguish the two, actually. The test, the acid test, is when you understand through what you just now referred to as intuition, something which is beyond the understanding of your senses, something which you have not understood it, studied at all and have not come across in this life. When some such thing is presented before you, it cannot be your mind. How can it be? Because your mind knows only those things which it knows. It cannot go beyond that. So if it is coming from something different, like you're trying to figure out for a long time the meaning of a mantra, you can't. And one day when you start quiet and meditating, suddenly the meaning of the mantra pops in, which your mind doesn't know, of course. I mean, conscious mind. And conscious knows many things which we don't know. Well, we yogis call it super conscious, not unconscious. Right? So normally, according to psychology, there is a conscious mind, there is a subconscious mind, and there is the unconscious mind. We say, can we go a step further and say there is also a superconscious mind? So this superconscious mind is loaded with all this knowledge. Loaded not in the bad way, it's not heavy, it's light. But if certain things which you cannot or could not have understood using your ordinary mind or intellect occurs to you, then it cannot be your mind. That is the criteria. Sometimes also emotions. The known emotions that we have, yes, if they present themselves in some exaggerated form, you can think that they are projected by the mind. But if there is an emotion that comes to you suddenly which is pure, which you have never encountered before, not even in your subconscious, that cannot be part of your mind. It's hard to distinguish, but if you keep this criterion in mind, it's possible to, at some point, figure out.
Okay, so on the Sanskrit, so I've been reading the English dictionary from back to the 1600s and watching how words change.
English dictionary?
English.
Uh-huh.
And so when you had said, there's many different definitions for one word,
Yes.
right, in Sanskrit and
Yes.
Hindi, and I just thought, do you think that the elimination of all of these definitions has led to more of a polarized, compartmentalized way of being?
But how does Sanskrit affect your being?
Well, a word like love. How many different words are there for love in Sanskrit? I don't know.
The word love does not exist in Sanskrit. This is an English word.
Right. So that English word.
There is a Sanskrit word called sneha, which is usually interpreted as love. But sneha is much more than what we call love. So what you're trying to say is that perhaps we have taken one definition as real and eliminated all other definitions and are looking at it and trying to make something out of it. Is that what you're trying to? You're right, in a way, yes. Like, Brahman is a Sanskrit word. Now, Brahman means that which actually cannot be even described by words. Upanishad says, Yad vacha anabhyuditam, that which words cannot describe. Now, if that is so, would I say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman? This is a very commonly used term, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. But actually, if you look at it, you are not Brahman. How can you be Brahman? Because we eat, we drink, we pee, we die. Brahman is ever alive. It's never dead. It's not born. So somewhere this definition has become more important than the actual fact. So this particular subject of fact, meaning and name is studied in this particular system of Hindu philosophy. I mean, there are other modes, maybe Greek philosophy, I don't know much. In the Shastra called Nyaya, one of the darshanas, where each word is taken, its sound is analyzed, it's a deep study. Its sound is analyzed, the word is analyzed, what are the different meanings of the word are looked into, and also that how does this word come about? How did it come about in the first place? So there is a whole teaching on nama and rupa, name and form. So since you are so much interested in dictionary and so on, I think you should get yourself a good English translation, let's say, of the darshana called Nyaya. There you will find, they go to the root of the words, how words are formed, what is the meaning, the name, the form and the word, what is the link between. You cannot imagine that 2000 or 1000 years ago somebody would have even thought about it. You know, since you are into language, this is what I am trying to say. And you will probably find that some root words that we have in English have come probably from Latin, and probably those roots words have come from Sanskrit. Simple words like, I don't believe that everything ancient, everything now is also there. No, but there are some facts. Like the common word door, before they formed the word door in English, 1000 years ago there was a Sanskrit word, dwar. We just need to change it a bit, right? Mother, 1000 years ago, Mata is there. Mother. Father, pater in Latin. Pittu in Sanskrit. Even brother is brata in Sanskrit. So if you look closely, you will find, since it's an ancient language, many of the root meaning of words we use today which have been kind of changed, and I wouldn't say distorted deliberately, but in the process of using they have been distorted. You will find the roots in Sanskrit. Perhaps if you know an ancient language like Latin or Greek, you might discover some there. No question. There's an ancient language called Hebrew. Nobody knows nowadays. Who discusses Hebrew? If you ask, I don't think even it is spoken anymore, because the scriptural Hebrew is different from what is spoken. There are wonderful words which are so close to Vedanta that it is unbelievable. For instance, since you're on line, I'm sorry I'm taking time, but she asked me a question which is connected to linguistics and philosophy and the meaning of words. You know the ancient story of how Moses goes to the mountain and sees the fire behind the bush? Right. So the first thing he hears on climbing the mountain is a voice which says, take off your shoes because you are on sacred ground. So you took out all her shoes, right? So it's an ancient practice. Take off your shoes because you are on holy ground. And then he goes there and he sees this light behind the tree. It's described as a fire behind the bush, but it's not a forest fire, obviously. So he sees something out there. And he says, what is this? Who are you? Who say, take off your shoes? Who? And there is a beautiful sentence which is in Hebrew, but it's so Vedantic. It's difficult to understand how it got connected sometimes. And the answer to the question, who are you, is Ahiye Ashar Ahiye. I am that, I am. In Sanskrit, it is tat, that. Can't be described. You can only say it is that. No other descriptions of how did it go to that ancient language. So my theory is that at some point there was an ancient language from which all these have come. And perhaps the closest to that is the ancient Sanskrit language. Perhaps.
The evening talk is going to be at a Jewish renewal congregation, so I'm hoping we can dive into that subject.
Oh my God.
A bit more.
Is it in a synagogue? No.
It's more of like a spiritual space.
Okay.
Yeah. We have a few more questions, and I know that Vanessa is going to be in the kitchen soon, so I'm going to go with your question first.
Hi, my name is Vanessa.
What's your name?
Vanessa.
Say that again.
Vanessa.
Spell it, please.
Vanessa.
Okay, Vanessa. Okay, thank you. Sorry, because of the mask.
No worries. So I have a question. It sometimes becomes challenging to be a practitioner and also live in the West and have all these different poles of how to operate in society and but also sticking to my practice. And simultaneously, a very related thing is how close I feel to God and spirituality. And I was wondering if you could discuss that a little bit in terms of the pull towards it and other times of pull away from God. Thank you.
The moment you start a spiritual practice, the moment you turn in another direction, because everybody is swimming with the stream. Here somebody stands up and says, I'm going to swim against the stream. Immediately it becomes a tussle. Not only between East and West or Eastern practice, the moment you turn to that direction, it becomes a tussle because you're going against the stream, what you call common stream. So there is no way out except to fight it out. There is no shortcut towards this. Keep reiterating that this is my most important thing that I have to do. So while I live in this world, I need to also kind of at least pretend to follow what's going on. There's a saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. I said, when in Rome, pretend to do as the Romans do. So carry on. Meanwhile, keep this always in mind that your calling is different. Therefore, it's not so easy to fit in. But then you can't totally break free from it. So stay with it. until you become really, really mature in your spiritual field, then you have to do nothing. What is not necessary will fall off, and what is required will remain. It's the nature of the world that it protects you as long as you are not mature, like a baby in the womb. When you're mature, it's the same muscles push you out. So don't worry about coming in, you'll come out when you want. But till then, continue. Also thank the world for providing you with food. Be thankful always. And shelter and all that. And continue with your practices till it becomes not so difficult to adjust between it. Of course it is difficult in the beginning, no question. I had an advantage because at the growing time when I was growing in the spiritual field, I was cut off from the world. So I had an advantage, I don't deny that. So it may be much more difficult for somebody who lives here and does it. But then everybody starts running away, what happens? You have to stay and take examples from those who have run away and try to bring it into practice. If you are sincere, I assure you, you will succeed at some point. Don't give up. Don't say it's not my destiny.
Namaskar. My name is Ashwin.
Ashwin?
Yeah. It's the second time meeting you at this exact same spot.
Oh, okay.
I have a sort of an existential question.
Oh, I don't know.
The more I go through life, the more I don't see the point of it. I mean, I'm not in any bad space. I'm just objectively wondering, I'm driven by my base desires for the most part, which I have to consciously quelch it.
Or fulfill.
The spiritual.
Or fulfill.
Or fulfill. But I also realize that it's a momentary pleasure that I get, and then I have to try again in the physical space.
Yes.
And then the spiritual side obviously is clear, but it requires a lot of sacrifices and
effort.
Yeah, but I know the result of that is more permanent.
Yes. Yes.
But the bigger question is, I didn't choose to play this game, but I have to play this game.
Yes.
So what's the point? Why am I forced to do this?
You're not forced to do it. Nobody is forcing you to become spiritual, right? It's only your mind that says, oh, this can't go on for long, this is temporary, so I need to find something that's permanent. That's what is driving you. It's not that you are forced to do any such thing. I think because you feel helpless, you think, why am I in this situation? Every human being is in this situation one way or the other. So it's not as if it's a forced situation. Also, if you are in a situation, instead of trying to find out why you are in the situation, you should get out of the situation. So how do we go about it? That is the most important thing. There's a nice story told by the Buddha. Somebody went into a mango grove. They were plucking mangoes. Some guy, some stranger came and shot an arrow. Arrow hit him here, and he fell down. Now the Buddha's question was, well, the arrow has hit this guy and he's down. What should be the first thing he should do? Lying there, easy to speculate on who hit the arrow, where did it come from, why has it happened, why am I in this situation, or find a means by which you can pull the arrow out. Because if you lie down and speculate, you'll be dead before the arrow is out, and you won't even find out who hit the arrow. So if you find yourself in a situation from which you want to be free, put all your efforts into that. Don't even try to find out why I am in this situation. You know what I mean? Because you'll be dead. You won't die. Of course, you are too young for that. I'm not talking that way, literally. Before you find out. So if you find out, you have the freedom then to figure out where it came from. Right? So don't consider it as some difficult situation where that would put. Make it easy. Think that you are lucky that you are thinking this way. Be proud of this. There are many people who go through life without even thinking about this. You are set apart from them because you are at least thinking about it, to be free of this chakkar. So, respect yourself for that. Okay? You're doing a good thing. At least I think so.
He's my brother.
Oh, okay. What's your name?
Ashwin.
And you?
Mayur.
Mayur. Oh, both of you live in the United States. Are you single or married?
It's complicated.
No, you.
Yeah, me. Yeah.
You are not married.
Separate.
Separate. And you?
Single.
Separate.
No, single.
You are not married.
No.
Okay.
Born and raised in Madras, Vasanagar.
Both of you.
I got my PhD from Berkeley.
Oh, on what subject?
Neuroscience and artificial intelligence. And
And you?
Robotics.
So you're the kind of people who should enter into the spiritual field.
so we also started a center recently to explore research on meditation.
Nice. Now,
I wanted to see if you
Uh-huh.
be open to
so,
it.
no, this time there's no time.
That's okay.
So, what I suggest is, I have been having a series of discussions with the IIT Delhi on exploring consciousness and also the Upanishad. There's also one with a neurologist, Dr. Venkatraman, on exploring consciousness. I think you should go through this a little more on YouTube and figure out if you can have some practical ways of, like charting out the changes that happen in the brain when meditation takes place.
Yeah, that's actually the center's goal. So we'd love to engage with you. And
Nice. Very good. There is no robotic meditation, but no, but I know that robotics is also used for the surgery now. The neurosurgeon tells me that he has seen the best surgery performed by robotics because there is no space for human error unless the machine goes wrong.
So,
Sorry.
Namaskar.
Namaste.
My name is Anubha, and
What did you say your name is?
Anubha.
Anubhav.
Anubha.
Anubhav, okay.
I was not raised in any kind of with any knowledge of spirituality, God, or religion. I was born in a Jain household. I'm a Jain household. And even then, other than occasional fasting, there was not much in my life. Various things transpired in the last 8 to 10 years, which brought me into this path, but essentially without any roots or any.
How old are you?
42. So around 33 was when this set of episodes started. And so mostly life has been my own guru, and I'm highly skeptical in general by nature. So when you talked about self-reliance earlier, I actually recognized that has helped me a lot, in spite of making it very, very difficult. But now I'm at a path where I have been, in fact, I'm coming to your retreat later.
You're coming to
Texas, exactly. But I'm at a place where I am, I don't know if I'm evading picking a path. I also do not, I'm very averse to any kind of cult behavior. So
What behavior?
Cult.
Cult, okay.
Yeah.
Thank God. Huh.
That I won't say triggers me, but definitely repulses very quickly. And I would also like to continue benefiting from many practices from multiple religions over time. So any advice you have for a person like me who can deepen our practice. Maybe, the idea of sadhana is obviously not foreign to me to pick something and stick with it, but at the same time, I am not sure. And I'm not seeing clear inner guidance on this. It seems to shift a lot.
Right. So now, I think one suggestion is, since you're coming to Texas, we get 2.5, 3 days to discuss these matters, among other things.
Yeah.
And the second is, I am not put off by your statement that you're skeptical. It's okay. There's no harm. Because no new thing has been found without somebody asking, is this possible? Even scientific discoveries have happened because some people were skeptical about what they thought is real and said, no, we need to explore. So that's okay. But now you're going to look into mind sciences. Now the science of the mind is a little different from the other material sciences. So the approach may also be slightly different. So we will discuss that later when we meet, because it's a vast subject, and please retain your skepticism till you come. I would be very happy, no problem here. Okay? Let's see how it goes. And in your kind of person, you have to find out for yourself and move forward. I can't, or somebody else cannot impose it on you. I understand that. It's okay. But don't also let the limited mind impose itself on you.
Try.
Which says that I should be right all the time. No, you may not be. You need to look at it carefully. As long as you are ready to examine it, it's okay. Yeah.
So we are technically right at 12:30, but I know there's at least 3 more questions, including one from the kitchen crew. And so I'm wondering if you feel it's okay if we...
I can take a couple of questions, yes.
I'm going to go to the person in the back first, because people back here...
But can you keep the questions short?
Yes.
So that I can keep the answers long? No, short.
Hello, my name is Rahul. I'm originally from Punjab,
Mm-hmm.
and I work with little children.
Uh-huh.
I work with little children,
Okay.
and I'm wondering if you have some guidance around stories
Mm-hmm.
that I can share with them,
Mm-hmm.
especially stories that they can take to sleep with them.
Mm-hmm.
Something that
What is the aim? What do you want to invoke in them with the story?
something that you think would serve little children, that would not necessarily in their understanding now, but something deeply understood by them, and something that maybe can become more alive in them as they get older. You were speaking of that meaning that comes to you, maybe through, I don't know, through some divine guidance later on, but something that they can really hold on to, and maybe can travel with them as they get older.
So I think you should start with stories that help to open their minds to things which are outside their ordinary scope of vision. So start with such stories. I have a suggestion. We used to have those old, there are those Jataka tales. In Buddhist literature, there is Jataka tales, both Jain and Buddhist. These are very useful tales to be retold to the children in a nice way. Plus, there are these we used to get old comics in English called Chanda Mama. I don't think they are there anymore. They stopped. If you can get hold of some of these old comics from somewhere and read out to them. With children, you need to read out. If you ask them to read, it won't work. You need to read out, and because they're children, you need to enact them in some way. It's not enough if you say, oh, there was a proud man, you should show how a proud man looks like. And when a tiger roars, you need to roar a little bit and show them how it... What I'm trying to say that a young child's brain is very open to understanding. We limit it by imposing our own knowledge and path through which it has to go. I think you should open the child, understand it. It's a good idea to start with this. When they're a little grown up, also give them the autobiography, which is available, and let them read it. I hope they don't run off to the Himalayas, but not required always. So I think you can start somewhere there. Of course, there are those little Aesop's fables and all available in English, but apart from that, you should orient them also to the understanding of ancient culture and tradition that has come to us. I think that's a good start.
Question from the kitchen.
If you ask me about cooking, I don't know much.
Pranam Guruji, I'm Debodina Sinha. I'm from Assam Tea Garden.
Oh, okay.
So my question is related to something personal. Like my mom is suffering from schizophrenia, and I really want to help her in terms of getting the benefits of the spiritual journey, but having that issue, so she is most of the time very delusional. So how can I help her to start the path of the spiritual journey?
No, I don't think she should be doing that now. Because if you start teaching her some kind of meditation or interiorization of your thoughts in the mind, it might adversely affect her schizophrenia. Because already she is in a space which is cut out from the world, and this will deepen it, and then she will get into trouble. So I would suggest you can try to keep her as happy as possible. Let her listen to music, beautiful music, or go for walks, and some simple meditation technique like breathing in and out and watching the breath. If she is ready to do that, if she enjoys it, then she will catch on to it. So don't give her anything that is tough for her to do. Because I know schizophrenia is a bad word actually. All human beings, what is the meaning of schizophrenia? Schizo means divided. Phrenia is the brain. How many of us are there without divided brains? Tell me. Percentage may be less or more. When it gets too much, then you say label a person schizophrenic. We're all in some way not totally united in our brains. We're all divided in some way. So we're all in a way schizophrenic, but that word has become bad. Especially in India, in the Western areas, like I was in Moscow and I had long discussions with the psychiatrists who tend to people who come there with such disorders, and they try to look at it as any other pathological disorder like a heart problem or diabetes. It's not set apart and say, oh, this is, you know what I mean. So try to make her at home as much as you can. I know moods are sometimes unpredictable, such people, but we need to do that.
Thank you.
Last question. Last question.
My name is Haima. I've met you long ago in Cubbon Road and Infantry Road days. I was thinking about what you said earlier about the brain being an imperfect instrument to get to understand your inner self, but we have only the brain to depend on. And so when, as somebody who has, who continues to be in touch with your inner self, how do you
make the distinction that that is the truth and not a product of the brain. Especially since we don't know very much about the brain. But you have such a strong response to that when you talk about other things. So I just want to understand it.
Yeah, now the thing is, I've never said that it is beyond the brain. I said it is beyond the known parts of the brain. First, let me make this clear. When I say this is beyond the understanding of the brain, and if you say I have only the brain, so how can I understand? What I mean is, there are unexplored parts of the brain which have not been explored because we need only 20% of our brain to survive on this earth. Even to study physics or quantum physics, we need only 20% of our brain. What happens to the rest of the brain? Is there something out there or no? So you start your inquiry with that. And there are parts of the brain, like the pineal gland, for instance, which has its own functions. The endocrine system has many glands, which when I say I am feeling good, the wellness factor is because there is more serotonin flowing into my system. Right? So, the science of yoga is that which can deliberately change your chemical composition. And then once it is changed, then you can probably explore and go beyond it. So, it's to free yourself from the limitations of the conditioned brain, rather. This is what I'm trying to say. And this happens only when the mind is absolutely quiet and tranquil. When the mind is absolutely quiet and tranquil, it becomes the tarmac from which you take off to that regions which are outside the ken of our ordinary brain. So make a distinction between an extraordinary brain and an ordinary brain. And perhaps we are moving towards understanding that extraordinary brain, which can tap and experience things which are beyond the understanding of the ordinary brain. Take it that way. When you reach there, then you can decide where. And also the feeling of the self, myself. Now I think I am this. As you go deeper, you discover that the self is pure consciousness. Now this is another discussion that's going on, whether consciousness is a product of the brain or whether the consciousness works through the brain. Well, the brain is an extraordinary computer, no question. But there is something working through the brain. Rather than that brain producing consciousness, we understand that the consciousness works through the brain. We make a distinction like that. So you need to, and therefore then it comes to this, that perhaps in some way, there is a kind of form of thought which can come directly from the consciousness without interference by the brain. Now this is possible only if the brain is absolutely quiet. How can the brain be absolutely quiet? Only when there are no distractions whatsoever. No contradictions pulling on either side. No distraction. When the brain is absolutely calm, then there is something which is outside, which is beyond. This one can only know through experience, and for experience we need to follow procedure. Although the procedure ultimately takes you out of all procedures. Ultimately.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to people.